Hello everyone, this is Mr. Thacker back with you to create another isometric example for you guys. So this one will be I-13. So you can already see my creation of I-10. I've not finished shading it. It needs some shading, so I may go ahead and just go over it and shade it a little bit how I want to make it look more three-dimensional. Let me start from the top. I can work down a whole lot better. But you know, just in an effort to make it look more three-dimensional as far as the object is concerned. To make it kind of be consistent, I'm going to also darken up through here a little bit, and you can see it kind of fade. Certainly I could come in with some kind of vertical strokes, and you can see kind of how that matches the shading from the right side. Remember to go in different directions to make your shading appear darker. But you can see the continuity from this surface, okay, over to this surface here. And then, let's see, so I'll go ahead also and darken this, and then we'll get into I-13, okay? So this is just showing you a little bit of rendering. So I'm finishing that up. Remember to go in different directions. And color pencil does erase, so you can go in and erase, like that's really stray mark that I did down here. You can erase that. But you can see how it just gives it a little bit more of a 3D appearance than just the drawing itself. Now, remember, you only need to render one, okay? So Let's jump into problem number 13. Problem number 13 is definitely more challenging than 10. 10 is a good starting point. And remember, we're looking at isocircles, also known as ellipses or elliptical shapes when they are arcs. Okay, so we're doing problem number 13. The first thing I need to do is I need to find out the dimensions for problem 13. So we'll zoom into problem number 13 and get the width, height, and depth for this particular object. Okay, so again, it looks like it is 10 wide and counting the blocks. The height, I would count, this is the very top of my object, so I would count this way. You could obviously go over to the right side and count the height in a straight line, which is equally effective. So there's two more, there's two more. So we're looking at 7 for the height. So finally, a dimension that's different from a prior example. And then the depth is 4. Okay, so those are my dimensions, and that's what I want to box out. So moving to my grid sheet, I'm going to rotate this some. So I'm going to lay out my x-axis, okay, here, my y-axis, and my z-axis, and count off my dimensions along those. So we're looking at 5 and 10 right there. And then 3 and 6, 7, right? 7 for our height. So it's different this time, so be careful. It's easy to choose 6, and then 4 for our depth, okay? So let's box that up. So I'll go ahead and create my left side. Remember, this is my right side, and this is my bottom. So I'll create my top. And I've now boxed just my front view. I have not boxed the object. I boxed just the front view. So likewise from this point, I'll go parallel to Z. And from this point, parallel to Y. Oops. And now I've boxed my right side. So I want to go parallel to X. And you may be thinking, oh, Mr. Thacker, that's touching the border. The object won't touch the border, but the box does. It's okay for construction lines to cross the border, but the object should never touch the border. Okay, there should always be space, as there is in problem I-10. There's space around the object where it does not touch. These are your border lines, right? They frame your drawing space, okay? So it looks like we're going to run into that issue, but it'll work out. Okay, so the next step is to establish the shape. And when we look at this object, number 13, it's got an L shape. You could even say that it's a P shape laying down, okay? Either way is fine. So we'll move that to the side. and begin to lay out that shape. So I'm going to start from the bottom, and if you look from the bottom, you'll see that this is too tall. Okay, 2 blocks tall, and then this is 4 blocks wide. Okay, so that's kind of where I'm going to go. I'm going to go 2 blocks up, all right, and make a mark, and I'm going to go parallel to X, okay, and parallel to Z. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and create the rest of that in 3D. Okay, so from this point I can go this way, and from this point, and again I'm not really counting, but I do know how far I do need to go, and I'll go that way, and it's great for my lines to intersect each other because I can see where those intersections are. So this is kind of the base of that object. All right. Then I can go about creating that 4 wide on this part here. So what I have created, class, is I've created this block right here, which is part of the shape. The problem is I don't go ahead and create this part of the shape because it's not on the very front. This edge tells us that. But also, if you look in the top view or the right side view, you can see that this part that is sticking up is in the back. Okay, so it's 2 blocks back. Likewise here, showing us the same thing. Remember, the front edge of the right side is closest to the front view. The front edge of the top view is closest to the front view. So it's important to place this in the right place. So what I'm going to do, since it's over on the left side, is I'm going to go over here to the left edge, and I'm going to count back 2 blocks. Okay, so right there, and I'm going to draw a line straight up. Okay, so parallel to Y. I'm also going to draw a line parallel to X, and I know that that is going to be 4 wide as I had counted before. So I'll draw a line straight up, representing the right edge. Okay, and I know it's got to go up here a little ways. The top edge of it is where this left edge meets the very top of the box, and so right there is the front of that face. Okay, the front of it. And I'm ready now to go ahead and give it depth. Okay, so I can see the front of the face, and I'm going to give it depth by making that line back and bringing that point up to here. Okay, and likewise bringing that edge back, and now we have that feature that's sticking up. We have that boxed. Okay, we'll call it a flange. All right, it's just something sticking up from the base. And anyway, so that's part of the shape. Okay, so we're really close to working out the shape of this object, and now we need to create the arc part of the shape. So there's an arc here, and that's where we're going to need to use the technique that was taught for creating iso circles today. All right, and then after that, after getting the shape, we'll go in and create that detail. Okay, while we're there. So key is to find the center point, and the radius is 2. So that means 2 from here. 2 from the top, and also 2 inside. Right there's the center point, so I'm just going to mark that. Now the problem is I have these extra lines in there, and these lines can get in the way and make it seem unclear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and do a little bit of erasing, and hopefully this doesn't smudge. All right, I'm just going to erase out what's in here because I'm going to end up drawing a rhombus. All right. To create this arc. All right, so it's important to get rid of what you don't need to make this work out well. So if this is the center point, and my radius is 2, okay, I've got that everywhere except for down here. So I need to make a line right here. Now, granted, we're only drawing the top of the arc, okay, and I could probably work that in with my skill level, but it's important to understand what that should look like and the proper method for doing so. So remember, right here are your largest angles. So I'll call this one A. Again, you don't need to label this. And this point right here, B. And so from A and B, we draw perpendicular bisectors. Okay, so draw to the midpoint, perpendicular bisectors to the midpoint, like so. So from A, and then also from B. Okay, perpendicular bisectors. And where those intersect, that gives us C. And let me go ahead and create this one to this point, okay, and D. All right. Now those will probably get erased in a few moments so I can draw my hole, but anyway, you see them there. So the arc actually goes from this point here, over and down to this point here. So I don't need this stuff down here in this part of the rhombus. I only am creating a semicircle, so I need half of this. However, I needed the full rhombus in order to make this technique work out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the measure from A, and we'll call this E right here. The measure from A to E, okay, and get a third point along this grid line. So you'll see me measure that out. Okay, so let's measure that distance, A to E, transfer that to this grid line here, and that puts me about right there. And I'm going to strike that arc. Okay. There it is. Okay. Likewise, I'm going to create a line from C to this angle point here, unlabeled, and take this distance, we'll say C to, I'll label it F, okay? C to F, and transfer that to this line. So again, I'll just take a measure, all right? Let me see. And transfer that to this line here, which is approximately there. And then I'll just strike, again, lining up 3 points helps us to make these curves. All right, and there it is. There's your arc. Now we have the shape. Okay? Now, not totally. We only have it in 2 dimensions. We need to give it the 3 dimensions. Okay? That's necessary. So this point right here, we need to give depth. So it is right there. This point, so E is here, and F is here. And I'll label those for you. E, we'll call it E prime, because E prime means that it's a copy, and this is F prime. So it's a copy, okay, of F. And I can also take back this point. Notice it's kind of in the middle of this rhombus, so that means it would be right there. Okay, I don't have that labeled. Excuse me. And then I have this point, which is kind of roughly in the middle here. Okay, if we actually take an edge back, which is a smart idea, right there is that point, okay? And then this point is right here at F. So we can line up F prime and that point and get this curved shape, okay? So you can kind of see it. And then line up E prime and this point and F prime. So instead of doing the technique all over again, all right, what I've done is just transferred the points back 2 blocks in depth, okay? And now I have the entire shape, okay? Now, there is, I say I have the entire shape, you got to be careful because there is a subtle little arc right here, okay? It's very subtle. It's just 1 block in radius, and so it's so small that I'm just going to rotate my paper a little bit, and I know that it needs to be about 2/3 in from the center point. Just exaggerate it a little bit. Okay, and there's that shape. All right. Now I'm ready to apply the details, okay? And there's only one detail, and it's the circle that goes in here. It's not actually a circle, it's an ellipse, right? It's a circle on our sheet. So again, to look at that detail, it's a circle on the sheet, but we know that a circle appears as an ellipse in isometric. So again, since it's so small, you could use the technique, but I think it's so small that technique kind of gets in the way. What I'm going to do is do what I did here. Here's the center, so here's the outside. I think it's important to mark these outside points, okay, which we'll darken over later, and just kind of go, you know, a third, exaggerate them a bit. Got to make sure it's curved, and then try to just keep a consistent radius around as you're creating this part right here, maybe halfway through. Okay, and certainly I could erase C and D. Hopefully that's not bothering you any. All right, and so there's my hole. Okay, so now I'll go in and I'll darken my object, which is my 4th step. So I just added my detail, which is my 3rd step. 4th step is to darken the object, and I'll begin darkening this object, starting with the curved lines. Okay, while I'm here, I'll go ahead and all right, get this one as well. Now this one only goes to that point right there, okay? So it's important to know to pay attention to what you are darkening. Okay, and I'll go ahead and darken this hole and these arcs right here. Okay, and yeah, close that ellipse out. And there we are. Now I'll connect everything. So this is where we want to make sure. And you're going to start to see this pop off the page a little bit. Okay, right here it's very important that from this point to this point, nice thing about this, creating this extra point, not only helps us with the curve, okay, creating the curve, but also gives us a tangent point where this surface ends, okay, or visually ends, right? So we no longer see that surface. That surface kind of comes to an edge right here, and so that line is very important. And then we can darken this line here, okay, and I'll keep darkening. It's a little bit thick. A little bit off the grid there. Be careful, you want to stay on the grid. So that would be a mistake, Mr. Thacker. Okay, and there it is. Okay, there's the object outside of this line, which is a bit of an issue because it's not following the grid. So, you know, you can come in there and say, all right, I think I'm just going to get rid of that line. It's hard to get rid of it when it is dark, okay? Especially with some erasers, it just still shows up, okay? You can kind of see it still shows up. So again, recreate that line, follow the grid line, and that makes it look better. And hopefully it's not too obvious that it's not a quality line. Okay, blend that in. And there you go. And so that is I-13. And notice you see the construction lines lightly for the most part. Some of them are a little bit darker than maybe they should be, but whoops. Okay, so you gotta be careful. Erasers can smudge, that's for sure. And this one certainly is. So anyway, you can see the grid lines and how that works out. And if you want to render this one, you can certainly go in and render that one. But that is I-13. Okay. Best wishes on your version of I-13, and we will move on to obliques in our next lesson. Take care.